The Fed has found that U.S. banks and foreign affiliates based here are well capitalized and generally in good shape. However, share buybacks are going to be suspended for the third quarter. Dividends are not, but they are capped. We'll have more on that in just a second. But first, it's important to note that there are several twists to this year's stress tests and CCAR. They combine the two, the analysis of bank capital and the analysis of bank capital payouts. The Fed's analysis this time based on the most severe stress scenario. 33 banks were tested. I think we have a chart that shows some of the bigger banks and what their capital would diminish to under this severe scenario. You're supposed to have at least 4% in Tier 1 equity capital. All of them, as you can see, do, but some of them come close. They also need combined Tier 1 and Tier 2 capital of 8% and a capital buffer that is reformulated this year. It's called the stress capital buffer now. It's going to be different from each firm, and that's not being disclosed today. The banks are being told starting next week they can let us know if they want what their additional capital requirement is, but they don't have to disclose it until August when the Fed will make all that public. Now, none of this means they can pay out a lot of capital yet. Because of COVID, the Fed added another layer of examinations onto the process this year that they're calling sensitivity analysis. What would happen, not to individual banks, but banks in aggregate under three scenarios going forward: a V-shaped recovery, a U-shaped recovery, and a W-shaped recovery. Under those scenarios, projected loan losses for the banks would be between $560 and $700 billion. Aggregate capital ratios would decline from 12% in the fourth quarter of 2019 to between 9.5% and 7.7%. The Fed's conclusion from the sensitivity analysis is most firms remain well capitalized, but several would approach minimum capital levels. And so here's the important part for investors. The Fed has decided that share repurchases are suspended for quarter three. Many banks suspended them in the second quarter. They've got to continue suspending them in the third quarter. Dividend payments will be capped, and they will be limited by income, the average net income for banks over the prior 4 quarters. Banks are also going to be required now to reassess their capital plans, taking into account this sensitivity analysis and their results. And then the Fed may do additional stress tests analysis later this year. And so sometime in the late summer or fall, we will find out when or if the banks can increase their payouts. The Fed may decide to just leave this suspension in place. And finally, we should note one member of the Fed strongly dissented with the rest of the board's decision. Lael Brainerd said, quote, "This is a time for large banks to preserve capital so they can be a source of strength in a robust recovery. I do not support giving the green light for large banks to deplete capital, which raises the risk they will need to tighten credit or rebuild capital during the recovery." The Fed's vice chairman in charge of supervision, Randall Quarles, said he thinks that this system works. It's prudent. It makes the banks conserve some capital while still enabling them to give out some of their profits to their shareholders.